The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. 200 alien representatives sat in rising tiers of gleaming seats, all focused on the single human standing at the center of the floor. James Miller straightened his blue diplomatic uniform and waited patiently as whispers echoed through the vast space. High Counselor Beam, a tall being with crystalline features, raised a glowing hand for silence. We gather today to discuss Earth's application for membership in the Galactic Council. His voice resonated through the chamber. Ambassador Miller represents the human species. Miller bowed slightly, maintaining the calm demeanor humans were known for. He didn't react when several council members laughed quietly at his gesture. We have reviewed Earth's history, Beam continued, his crystal face reflecting different colors as he spoke. Your species seems unusually fearful of conflict. A representative from the warrior race of rock plains stood up, his stone-like skin grinding as he moved. They write endless stories about the horrors of war. Their most famous quotes are about preventing conflict. They spend more time talking about peace than building weapons. He pointed at Miller. How can such a weak species join our ranks? Miller opened his mouth to respond, but another council member cut in. This one had 6 arms and bright orange fur. Look at their entertainment. They make sad movies about soldiers coming home. Their children read books about the cost of fighting. Every human celebration of victory is mixed with sorrow. The chamber filled with agreeing noises. Some representatives were clicking their beaks, others were flashing bright colors, all showing their doubt about humans. High Counselor Beam raised his hand again. Ambassador Miller, how do you defend your species' obvious fear of war? Miller took a deep breath. He looked around the chamber, meeting the many different types of eyes watching him. Representatives of the council, you say we fear war. I ask you, does a scientist fear the particles they study? Does a doctor fear the tools they use? That makes no sense, the Rock Plains warrior growled. War is not a tool. It is a test of strength. Miller nodded slowly. Perhaps we should review some of Earth's history in more detail. We have seen enough. A bird like being called out, its feathers shining with metallic colors. Humans write poetry about peace. They teach their children that war is terrible. They hold ceremonies remembering their dead instead of celebrating their victories. The chamber erupted in loud agreement. Even High Counselor Beam's crystalline features showed what looked like amusement. Very well, Miller said quietly, but his voice somehow carried across the noise. I only hope you remember this conversation in the future. Beam waved his glowing hand. The council has reached a decision. Earth will be placed under a trial period. You may observe council meetings, but cannot vote. We will watch how your species handles itself in the galaxy. As Miller bowed again and turned to leave, he heard more laughter. The Rock Plains warrior was telling others nearby. They'll probably write a sad poem about this meeting. Walking out of the chamber, Miller touched the communication device on his wrist. Central Command, this is Ambassador Miller. The Council has made exactly the mistake we expected them to make. The device buzzed softly. Understood, Ambassador. Should we proceed with Protocol Quiet Shield? Miller looked back at the Grand Chamber, where the Council had already moved on to other matters. None of them noticed the small smile on his face. Yes, he said, and let's hope they never need to learn why humans really fear war. As he walked away, the artificial suns continued to shine on the Council chamber. The representatives continued their discussions, believing they had just seen proof of human weakness. None of them wondered why a species that feared war had somehow survived long enough to reach the stars. They would learn soon enough. 3 months after Earth's trial membership began, alarms blared through the Galactic Council chamber. The artificial suns flickered as emergency protocols activated. High Counselor Beam's crystalline form glowed with urgent red patterns as he called the session to order. The Razors have attacked a human colony, he announced, his voice sharp with concern. We must monitor this situation to see how humans handle their first interstellar conflict. The chamber's main screen activated, showing a star system at the edge of human space. The colony world, New Hope, orbited a yellow sun much like Earth's. Red dots on the display showed razor ships surrounding the planet. Their response will be amusing. The Rock Plains warrior laughed. Perhaps they will send poets to recite sad verses at the razors. The chamber grew quiet as new data appeared on the screen. In orbit around New Hope, 30 razor warships faced a single human space station. Observe, Beam said, how the humans will surely surrender to save lives. He stopped mid-sentence. The screen had exploded with activity. Hundreds of new signals appeared at the system's edge. "What's happening?" asked the orange-furred representative, all 6 arms moving in confusion. Admiral Kate Thompson's face appeared on the Council's communication channel. Her expression was calm, her gray hair neat under her cap. "This is Earth Fleet Command to all Razor forces. You have exactly 1 chance to withdraw." The Council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The Razors were known for their fighting prowess. Everyone expected the humans to beg for mercy or flee. "Where did those ships come from?" someone asked. A technical expert, his tentacles moving across multiple data screens, answered. "They were waiting. Hidden behind the system's outer planets, the humans had a defensive fleet in position before the attack." The Razor commander, his blade-ridged face filling another screen, snarled. "You hide like cowards. Come and fight." Admiral Thompson's expression didn't change. Protocol Quiet Shield activated. "All units, execute Battle Plan Delta." The Council watched in stunned silence as the human fleet moved. Instead of charging forward like every other species would, their ships split into precise formations. Each group moved with perfect coordination, like dancers performing a deadly ballet. "Impossible," the Rock Plains warrior whispered. "Their ships move like they've practiced this exact battle 1,000 times." Another council member, their crystalline structure similar to beams, spoke up. "According to these readings, they have practiced it. They run something called war games constantly. Every scenario, every possible attack. They prepare for everything." The Razor ships launched their first attack. They were brave warriors, charging directly at the human fleet. It was a strategy that had won them many victories. It was exactly what the humans expected. The human fleet's formation shifted. Ships moved in patterns that seemed random at first, but soon revealed their deadly purpose. Each Razor attack met empty space while human ships appeared from unexpected angles, their weapons precise and devastating. "Notice," Admiral Thompson's calm voice explained to the Razors, "we're targeting your engines and weapons. We prefer capturing ships to destroying them. Please consider surrendering." The Council chamber was absolutely silent now. They watched as the human fleet systematically disabled Razor ships without destroying them. It wasn't just fighting, it was surgery with starships. "High Counselor," Ambassador Miller's voice came through suddenly. He had been quietly watching from his observer's seat. "You all thought we feared war because we speak of its horrors. The truth is, we fear it because we understand it better than anyone. We've spent thousands of years perfecting it, hoping we'd never need to use that knowledge again." The main screen showed the battle's end. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. The Razor fleet floated powerless, captured rather than killed. "Remember," Miller said softly, "sometimes the people who most respect a weapon's power are the ones who are best at using it." The Council members looked at each other in growing understanding. They had completely misunderstood humanity's relationship with war. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council called an emergency session 1 week after the Razor incident. This time, instead of sitting in their usual places, the representatives crowded around the central platform, where Professor Tom Walker stood next to a simple display screen. "You asked to understand humans and war," Walker said, adjusting his glasses. His plain brown suit and gentle voice made him look more like a kindly teacher than a military expert. "Let me show you why we fear it." The screen lit up with images from Earth's history, ancient battles, modern conflicts, and everything in between. Humans didn't always hate war, Walker explained. Like many of you, we once celebrated it. But we learned too well. The Rock Plains warrior, who had laughed at humans just a week ago, leaned forward. Your ships moved with perfect order against the Razors. How? Because we've had more practice at war than any species in this room. Walker's voice remained gentle, but his words made the chamber grow cold. We fought so much that we had to become experts at it just to survive. He touched the screen, bringing up new images. See this? We call it total war. When humans fight, we don't just send armies. We turn our entire civilization into a war machine. Factories, farms, science. Everything focuses on the fight. The orange-furred representative raised all 6 hands. But your poetry, your sad songs about war, are written by people who understand war's true power, Walker finished. We don't write sad songs because we're weak. We write them because we know exactly how terrible we can be. The screen showed more images. Factories building thousands of ships. Armies moving with precise coordination. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. Most species, Walker continued, fight until one side wins. Humans, we learn to fight until no one can fight anymore. We call it absolute victory. It's why we try to capture the Razor ships instead of destroying them. Total defeat means no one wants to fight again. High Counselor Beam's crystalline form flickered with concern. You speak of war like it's a science. Because we made it one. Walker nodded. We studied it, improved it, made it more efficient. Then we looked at what we created, and it terrified us. He showed them military academies, training grounds, and war games. Every human soldier spends more time practicing war than fighting it. Every strategy is tested hundreds of times before it's needed. That battle with the Razors, we had simulated similar scenarios over 10,000 times. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Walker waited for them to quiet down. You thought our fear of war was weakness, he said. The truth is, we fear war because we're too good at it. We turned it into an art, a science, and an industry all at once. Then we looked at our creation and realized we had to find a better way. Ambassador Miller stepped forward from his observer's seat. That's why we work so hard for peace. Not because we can't fight, but because we know exactly what happens when we do. The screen showed one final image. The Earth, beautiful and blue, seen from space. We reached the stars, Walker said quietly, because we learned to fear our own power. We build mighty ships and train perfect soldiers while praying we never need them. We remember our wars so we don't forget why we choose peace. The council chamber was silent. The Rock Plains warrior stood slowly, his stone-like features set in a new expression, respect. Now I understand, he said. You don't fear war because you are weak. You fear it because you are strong. Walker nodded. The most dangerous weapon is one that knows its own power. Humanity learned that lesson. We just hope we never have to teach it to anyone else. As the council members looked at each other with new understanding, alert signals began flashing again. The Razors had not learned their lesson. The real demonstration of humanity's power was about to begin. Captain Robert Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Thunder, watching multiple holographic displays showing the ongoing battle. The Razors had returned with a larger fleet, thinking numbers would give them victory. They didn't understand what they were facing. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives watched the same battle displays with growing amazement. Watch carefully, Ambassador Miller told them. You're about to see why humans approach war differently than any other species. The Razor fleet moved forward in a massive wave, 300 ships strong. They expected the humans to either run away or meet them head-on. Instead, they found empty space. Enemy fleet approaching optimal position, Hayes reported calmly. Beginning Operation Checkmate. The council members watched in confusion as human ships appeared to scatter in random directions. The Razor commander's laugh boomed through the communication channels. They run. Victory is. He never finished his sentence. The seemingly random movement of human ships suddenly made sense. Like pieces on a chessboard, each ship had moved to exactly the right position. First wave, execute, Hayes ordered. Small fighter craft appeared from behind nearby asteroids. Larger ships emerged from hiding spots in the planet's rings. Ground-based weapons activated on nearby moons. The Razor fleet found itself caught in a three-dimensional web of coordinated attacks. Impossible, the orange-furred council member gasped. They're attacking from every direction at once. The Rock Plains warrior studied the display intently. Look at their formation. It's like they're playing a game, but with warships. Combined arms warfare, Professor Walker explained, having joined the council observers. Humans never fight with just one type of force. We coordinate everything. Ships, fighters, ground bases, electronic warfare, even the terrain itself. The Razor fleet tried to adjust, but every move they made had been predicted. When they turned to face one threat, they exposed themselves to another. When they tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked by carefully positioned human forces. "Sir," a human officer reported to Hayes, "enemy ships are switching to their secondary communications, beginning electronic warfare countermeasures." The council watched as Razor ships suddenly lost contact with each other. Their coordination fell apart as human electronic warfare systems blocked their communications. This isn't just fighting, High Counselor Beam realized. This is art, science, mathematics, all combined into warfare. Hayes's voice remained steady as he directed the battle. Group 3, execute flanking maneuver. Cyber teams, begin Phase 2. Ground batteries, prepare for synchronized barrage. The Razor fleet, once proud and powerful, now looked like a confused crowd. Each ship fought bravely, but bravery meant little against an enemy that had turned war into a precise science. "Notice," Miller said to the council, "we're still trying to disable, not destroy. Every move is calculated to end this fight with minimal loss of life." A new hologram appeared, showing captured Razor ships being quickly surrounded by human medical and rescue vessels. Even in the middle of battle, humans were preparing to help their defeated enemies. "Final phase," Hayes announced. "All units, execute pattern Delta." The remaining Razor ships found themselves herded into a smaller and smaller space. Escape routes vanished. Weapons fire came from perfectly calculated angles. Within minutes, the battle was over. "Enemy fleet neutralized," Hayes reported. "Beginning rescue operations." The council chamber was silent. They had just watched 300 warships defeated by a force half their size, and the humans made it look like a carefully rehearsed dance. "Now you understand," Miller said quietly. "We don't avoid war because we're weak. We avoid it because when humans wage war, we wage it completely, perfectly, and overwhelmingly. We hold back not because we can't fight, but because we know exactly how effective we are at fighting." As rescue ships moved in to help their former enemies, the council finally understood. Humans hadn't just studied war. They had mastered it, then chosen to master peace instead. The Razors were about to learn the same lesson. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been running for 3 days straight. On every screen in the chamber, new information about human military capability kept appearing. What they saw changed everything they thought they knew about the species. "These can't be right," the orange-furred representative said, all 6 arms pointing at different displays. "Humans have turned their entire home system into a fortress, but we never noticed." High Counselor Beam's crystalline form pulsed with concerned lights. "And look at their production numbers. Their factories are building ships faster than any species we've ever seen." The council watched as human industrial might revealed itself. Hidden shipyards around Earth's moons sprang to life. Factories that had been making civilian goods switched to military production with practiced ease. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up. "Ambassador Miller," Beam called out, "your species, you were ready for war all along." Miller stood from his observer's seat. We were ready because we had to be. But being ready for war doesn't mean we want it. New alerts flashed across the screens. The Razor leadership had rejected peace talks, believing they could still win if they committed their entire military. They don't understand, the Rock Plains warrior growled. I studied the human battles. They haven't even used their full strength yet. Professor Walker stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. We tried to warn them. We always try to warn them. Computer, show industrial output comparison. The main screen displayed a graph. The line showing human military production rose sharply, climbing higher than anything the Council had seen before. By the end of this week, Walker explained, we will be producing more ships than the entire Razor Empire has built in the last year. By next week, we'll double that. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. One representative stood up. But how? Where were these factories hiding? They weren't hiding, Miller said. You saw our industrial centers and thought they were just for civilian goods, because that's what they were making, until they needed to make something else. New images appeared, massive factory complexes smoothly switching from making cars to tanks, from civilian ships to warships, from everyday electronics to military equipment. We call it industrial mobilization, Walker explained. Every factory, every industry is designed to convert to military production if needed. We've had thousands of years to perfect the system. The screen suddenly lit up with urgent alerts. The Razors had launched their full attack, sending every ship they had. Instead of panic, the human command channels remained calm. Admiral Thompson's voice came through, steady as ever. All units, execute Operation Rolling Thunder. And remember, we still prefer to capture rather than kill. The Council watched as human ships moved with devastating precision. But it wasn't just the ships. Now they saw the full scope of human warfare. Electronic warfare ships blocked Razor communications. Supply ships moved in perfect coordination. Repair vessels kept the fleet running at peak efficiency. Your ships work together perfectly, Beam observed, like they share one mind. Not one mind, Miller corrected. Many minds working together. We've learned that war isn't about individual battles. It's about coordination, logistics, and planning. A new alert caught everyone's attention. The Razor fleet was experiencing total communications failure. Their ships drifted in confusion as human electronic warfare systems shut down their networks. We could destroy them all right now, Walker noted quietly. But that's not our way. Watch. The human fleet moved forward, precisely disabling Razor ships while broadcasting surrender instructions on all channels. Medical ships waited nearby, ready to help the crews they had just defeated. The Rock Plains warrior stood up. Now I truly understand. You don't avoid war because you fear it. You avoid it because you're too good at it. Miller nodded. We learned to master war so completely that we realized how horrible that mastery could be. That's why we work so hard for peace. As they watched the human fleet systematically dismantle the Razor attack, the Council finally understood the truth about humanity. They weren't peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were strong enough to choose peace. The main screen in the Galactic Council chamber showed a sight no one had ever seen before: the complete defeat of the Razor Empire's military forces without a single destroyed ship. Every Razor vessel floated powerless in space, their crews alive but thoroughly beaten. Admiral Thompson's image appeared on the command channel. All enemy ships have been neutralized. Beginning rescue and humanitarian operations. The Council members watched in stunned silence as human rescue ships approached their defeated enemies. Medical teams boarded the disabled vessels. Supply ships brought food and water. It was a kind of victory no one in the galaxy had ever witnessed. I don't understand, the orange-furred representative said, all 6 arms wrapped around himself in confusion. They have totally defeated the Razors. Why are they helping them? Ambassador Miller stood at his usual spot. Because this is how humans wage war now. Total victory doesn't mean total destruction. New images filled the screens. Human ships were already moving toward Razor colonies, not with weapons, but with supplies. Medical ships, food transports, and reconstruction vessels flew alongside the warships. The Razor leadership has surrendered, High Counselor Beam announced, his crystalline form glowing with amazement. They say the humans gave them no choice. Not through destruction, but through kindness. Professor Walker nodded. We learned long ago that the best way to end a war is to turn enemies into friends. Watch what happens next. The screen showed human teams helping repair damaged Razor ships. Other humans were organizing medical aid for injured Razor crews. Supply ships distributed food and water to Razor colonies that had been cut off during the fighting. This is why we were ready, Miller explained. Not just for fighting, but for what comes after. Our rescue ships were prepared before the first shot was fired. Our medical teams were ready before the battle began. The Rock Plains warrior stood up, his stone-like features showing clear respect. You planned how to help them before you even fought them. Of course, Admiral Thompson's voice came through. Victory means nothing if it only creates more enemies. We learned that lesson centuries ago. The Council watched as humans implemented their post-victory plans. Rather than occupy Razor worlds, they set up joint administration systems. Instead of taking resources, they started trade agreements. Where there had been battles, they now built hospitals and schools. Look at these numbers, one council member said in awe. The humans are spending more on helping the Razors rebuild than they spent on the actual fighting. Miller smiled gently. That's because we understand something many species don't. The true cost of war isn't counted in ships or weapons. It's counted in lives and futures. We fight to end fights, not to start new ones. New data appeared on the screens. The Razor Empire, which had never known defeat, was transforming. Their worlds were opening up to trade. Their people were learning new ways of living. The warrior culture that had defined them for centuries was evolving into something new. This, Walker said quietly, is why humans fear war. Not because we can't win, but because we know that true victory means helping your enemies become your friends. High Counselor Beam's crystalline form shimmered with understanding. You've achieved something remarkable. Total victory without destruction. Complete defeat without humiliation. We call it constructive victory, Miller explained. The art of winning so completely that your former enemies thank you for defeating them. The screen showed the final phase of the human victory. Razor ships being repaired and returned to their crews, now bound by peace treaties. Razor worlds receiving aid and technology. A warrior culture learning that there were better ways to show strength than through combat. The council chamber was silent as they witnessed this new kind of ending to a war. The humans had not just defeated their enemies. They had shown the galaxy a better way to win. And in doing so, they had taught everyone why they feared war enough to master peace. 1 month after the Razor conflict, the Galactic Council gathered for a historic session. The chamber looked different now. Where there had once been separate seating areas for different species, the seats were now mixed. Near the front, a Razor representative sat next to the Rock Plains warrior, both listening intently. High Counselor Beam stood at the center, his crystalline form glowing with all the colors of peace. Today, we vote on 2 matters: Earth's full membership in the Council and the new galactic peace protocols they have proposed. The main screen showed images from the past month. Razor worlds flourishing under human assistance. Former enemies working together on reconstruction projects. Military vessels converted to exploration ships. Before we vote, Beam continued, Ambassador Miller has asked to speak one final time. Miller walked to the center of the chamber. He looked older than when he'd first stood there, but his eyes held a quiet strength. When we first came to this chamber, he began, you thought humans feared war because we were weak. You saw our sad songs, our solemn remembrances, our constant talk of peace, and you misunderstood. The screen showed Earth's history, not the battles this time, but the memorials, the peace treaties, the hands reached out to former enemies. We fear war, Miller continued, because we remember. We remember every battle, every loss, every moment when we had to use our terrible efficiency at warfare. We remember so well that we built our entire civilization around making sure we never forget. The orange-furred representative raised all 6 hands. But you are so good at war. Your victory over the Razors was perfect. Perfect. Miller shook his head. No, a perfect victory would be preventing war in the first place. What we achieved with the Razors was just the best possible outcome once peace had failed. A Razor stood up, his blade-ridged face reflecting the chamber's lights. My people never knew defeat before humans. Now we thank them for defeating us. This is a power greater than any weapon. Professor Walker stepped forward, standing beside Miller. That's the final lesson we learned about war. The strongest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's turning them into friends. The screens filled with new images, human warships being converted to exploration vessels, military factories returning to civilian production, soldiers becoming teachers and builders. We propose these peace protocols, Miller said, not because we fear war, but because we respect its power too much to use it carelessly. We've mastered the art of war so completely that we've learned the greatest victory is never having to use that mastery. High Counselor Beam raised his glowing hand. The Council will now vote on Earth's membership and the peace protocols. The Chamber's voting system activated. Lights flickered as each representative made their choice. When the results appeared, even Miller looked surprised. Unanimous approval. Earth is now a full member of the Galactic Council, Beam announced. Furthermore, humans will chair the newly formed Department of Peace and Security. The Rock Plains warrior stood, his stone-like features set in a solemn expression. We understand now. You showed us that the greatest strength isn't in knowing how to win a war. It's in knowing how to win the peace that follows. Miller nodded. Remember this day, not as the day humans proved their strength, but as the day the galaxy chose a better path. We've mastered war so that others don't have to. Now, let's master peace together. As the chamber filled with approving sounds from hundreds of different species, the screen showed one final image, Earth, beautiful and blue, now joined by ships of all species working together to explore rather than fight. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson. True power lies not in the ability to wage war, but in the wisdom to choose peace. And that was just the beginning.